Hello, this is Johnny Chisholm, and I would like to demonstrate the CART Assessment Report tool. This is an Excel spreadsheet that helps planners by printing a report of the questions that are going to be asked in CART based on selected land uses, modifiers, and resource concerns. First, let's look at how this tool can be used. The tool can be provided to field users so that they can develop their own list of questions based on local conditions. Or the tool can be used at the area or state level by planning support specialists to develop lists of questions for certain scenarios of land uses, modifiers, and resource concerns typical of their area, saving time for field users. For example, many states have used resource concern checklists in the past for field inventories, and these lists of questions could replace those. Before we begin the demonstration, let's discuss what's actually contained in the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet consists of 5 tabs. When the spreadsheet is opened, it opens to the Instruction tab, which gives instructions on using the spreadsheet. There is a Land Use-RC tab. This tab contains a form where the user can select land uses, modifiers, other factors, and resource concerns that can be assessed. Individual resource concerns can be selected, and if no individual resource concerns are selected, the tool defaults to an RMS option and all resource concerns are selected by default. So the user has the option to include all resource concerns for an RMS alternative or select individual resource concerns for a progressive alternative. The next tab is the RC Print tab. This allows the user to print a list of the selected land uses and resource concerns that were identified on the previous tab. We will look closer at that when we get to the demonstration. The next tab is the Questions tab. This tab has all the questions that are contained in CART. If this page is printed now, a list of all the questions in CART for all land uses and all resource concerns will print. The tool allows the list to be filtered by the selected resource concern and land uses on the Land Use RC tab. The last tab is the Recommended RCs tab. This tab allows states, areas, or users to specify which resource concerns are recommended to be assessed for each land use, modifier, or other factor. The resource concerns are listed in the rows, and the land uses, modifiers, and other factors are listed in the columns. To mark a resource concern as recommended, the user simply places the number 1 in the cell where the resource concern row and land use column intersects. If the resource concern is not recommended to be assessed, the cell should be left blank. The grid has been completed as a default condition, but users may edit the values to represent state, area, or local conditions. Let's go back to the Instructions tab, then we will move into the demonstration. The first time the spreadsheet is used, a security warning will appear at the top of the screen, and the user must click the Enable Content button to enable the macros. The first step is to click the Land Use RC tab, which will take the user to a form that allows them to select the applicable land uses, modifiers, and other factors. It also allows the user to select resource concerns. And if no individual resource concerns are selected, the RMS option is yes, and all resource concerns are selected by default. In this case, we will select some land uses, modifiers, and other factors. I select the crop land use. When a land use is selected, several resource concerns are highlighted in green. These are the resource concerns that are marked as recommended to be assessed on the Recommended RCs tab for the crop land use. I select the irrigated modifier, and other resource concerns are highlighted as recommended to be assessed. I select the nutrients applied and pesticides applied. Other factors and additional resource concerns are highlighted. Now let's look at the resource concerns. The recommended resource concerns to be assessed are highlighted in green based on the land use and modifier and other factor that are selected. At this point, since individual resource concerns are not selected, the RMS option is yes, and all resource concerns are selected by default. So I'm going to select the classic gully erosion resource concern. As soon as I selected one of the recommended resource concerns, the RMS options changes to no, and now the only resource concern that is selected is the one that is checked. The only questions that would print at this time are the questions for classic gully erosion for the selected land use of crop. I will proceed to select the recommended resource concerns. Although the planner has the option of selecting the recommended, they may also select some that are not recommended, as well as not select some that are recommended. The planner should use their experience or discussion with the client and based on the client's objectives to select resource concerns to assess. For example, surface water depletion is not a concern in our area, so I will not select it. Also, wind erosion is not a concern in our area, so it is not selected. Once I have made my selections, I have two choices. I could click the Prepare Form button to create the list of questions. But before I do that, I would like to print a list of land uses and resource concerns that I selected. So I click the Print Selected Land Use, Modifiers, and RCs button. I am taken to the RC Print tab, where the form shows only the land uses, modifiers, and resource concerns that I have selected. I will print this form to use when I go into CART to help me make sure I select the correct land uses, modifiers, and resource concerns in CART. Notice the resource concerns are listed under the same categories that will appear in CART. Once I print the form, I will click the Prepare Form button. That takes me to the Questions tab, with only the questions applicable to the selected land uses, modifiers, and resource concerns expanded. All other questions are collapsed and not visible. Notice that the headers displayed will match the headers displayed in CART. In the Resource Inventory section to aid the planner in making sure applicable questions are answered. Note that before you print the document, you may want to use the page break preview in Excel to adjust the page breaks so some pages do not break in the middle of a question. Hopefully, this demonstration will help you to use the CART Assessment Question Report tool to streamline your planning and assessment.